roundtable on navigating change, the HR perspective on future talent management. And our session chair is going to be Mr. Joydeep Datta Gupta, former partner, Deloitte India, and board member of Asia Pacific at Deloitte, and former president, CMA. An amazing guy. I've known him from college days. School days, sorry, yeah, I forgot that. we both studied from class 1, I think, right up to our third year. And of course, Joydeep Datta Gupta is an independent director on the boards of 3 NBFCs, including a listed company. He's also had senior leadership positions across, and Joydeep is a chartered accountant and has a 33-year experience across Big 4 professional service firms. Joydeep has served on boards of several Chamber of Commerce, social and charitable organizations, and a municipality. Wow. He was the president of CMA from 2006 to 2007. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the sessions chair, Mr. Joydeep Datta Gupta, who will be joining us and calling on our speakers and introducing them accordingly.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here. I'm also very pleased to be here because these chairs are a lot more comfortable than those chairs. I was sitting there all this while. It's nice to be up here. And as I come up here, I find this note kept on this tabletop. Sir, we are running a bit late. We will not take questions from the floor. So we will probably reuse this at the end because we might also run a bit late. Okay? So we take that as a given. Now I'd like to request my fellow panelists to come up. I'll just tell you who they are and give you a little bit of background. Mr. Sandeep Banerjee, welcome, please. He is the Chief Human Resource Officer at Eveready Industries. He has a wide range of experience in people management and leadership across a wide array of sectors. His career is marked by a unique ability to bridge the gap between manufacturing and services, thriving in multicultural environments at both multinationals as well as at large Indian enterprises. He's been a transformational HR leader and has successfully ensured that culture and process transformation at his company, at Eveready Industries Limited. His previous roles at renowned organizations like H&R Johnson, Reliance Industries, and the Taj Hotels have further honed his expertise in shaping effective HR strategies. Recognized for his contributions to talent management, Sandeep has received several prestigious awards, including CHRO of the Year by Global HR Excellence and Change Management Award at the HRAI Awards 2023. He's also proud to have been honored with the Indian Achievers Award for navigating complex transformations, as well as accolades like the Top 100 Super Achiever Award and Top 101 HR Minds Award from the World HRD Congress. His commitment to excellence has also led to his organization being recognized with the National Best Employer Award. He is an alumnus of IIMA and NUS with a focus on data science. Sandeep combines his academic background with a passion for strategic HR practices. His expertise includes change management, coaching, and aligning HR initiatives with business goals. Above all, he believes in nurturing talent and celebrating employee contributions, driving organizational success through innovative HR practices. Sandeep Banerjee's wealth of experience and his genuine dedication to people make him a key leader in cultivating vibrant workplace cultures and driving sustainable business growth. Welcome, Sandeep. We also have on the panel Professor Rahul Kumar. Please do join us. His CV is a lot shorter, though I'm sure on achievement he is right up there. So Professor Rahul Kumar is an assistant professor in the MIS area. Prior to this, he was associated with IIM Sambalpur and XIMB in IS and Decision Sciences respectively. Post PhD, he also had a brief stint in Infosys Consulting, where he worked as an analytics consultant. His research interests pivot around analytics and AI-based applications in practical settings. Many of his works have featured in international journals of high repute. Welcome, Professor. And we also have on the panel Mr. Ranjan Banerjee. He is an HR leader with 29 plus, that is 30 years of experience. He is a change and transformation specialist and has led the people function in various organizations. He is presently the Group Head, Human Resources of Berger Paints, India Limited. Ranjan has been in HR leadership roles in several large Indian conglomerates and leading foreign multinationals across sectors such as FMCG, telecom, hospitality, power and infrastructure, media and entertainment, textiles and fashion fabrics, petrochemicals, and FMCG. He has worked in organizations such as Vodafone, ITC, Park Hotels, Bata India, United Breweries, RPG Enterprises, Srei, Aditya Birla Group, and Epsilon Carbon. I must make an observation, Ranjan. Learning from what Mr. Sandeep Kumar said, that if you have worked cross industry, across many sectors, you must be very high on EQ. Is that correct? Sorry? Yeah, through this panel, we'll evaluate whether Mr. Sandeep Kumar was right or wrong. Okay. Yeah. So, Ranjan has led cultural transformations to enable organizations prepare for growth and in restructuring organizations to make them market-facing while repositioning the role of HR from transactional to transformational. With a master's degree in social work from Vishwabharati, Shantiniketan, and an HR executive program at Ross Business School, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Ranjan brings with him rich knowledge of people management across sectors from manufacturing to services, while possessing a strong blend of hands-on experience and strategic oversight in organizational development. So that's our panel for this session. Thank you. So I thought that, I'll tee it up a little bit, give a few comments, and then ask each speaker to talk for 10 minutes. That was my script that was given to me, crafted by Mr. G.M. Kapur here. He said, okay, so this is how you're going to run it. So a few minutes ago, we met the speakers, and I met over there at that table. And then I said, this is how we'll do it. So then there was a mutiny even before the session started, saying, no, that's not how we're going to do it. We haven't prepared these 10-minute and 15-minute presentations and talks. Okay. Professor, I'm sorry, you were not part of it. Do you have a 10-minute talk or 15? You're okay with any format? Sorry? Yeah, he can talk on anything, right? So, given that, there was a mutiny in the ranks and I was outvoted, we'll have to play it a little differently. So we'll have a chat, and the audience are more than welcome to join in on the chat as we go along. The only problem is we have mics, you don't have mics, so you will be at a disadvantage. Sorry? Yeah, you'll have to have a very loud voice to join in. Now, CMA requested me to write an article which they said will be the lead article for the souvenir that they are publishing on this occasion. Okay? And if you look into the souvenirs that you've been given, you'll find a lead article that I have written. Okay? And that is quite a disadvantage for me, because now that I have written the article, I am somehow emotionally attached to the article and obliged to set the tone along the lines of that article. Okay? The only problem is, I asked Anirban of CMA, how many words are you looking for? roughly, give me the size of the article you want. She said 3,000 words. So I've written a 3,000 word article. Okay. Now I'm struggling to remember what I wrote. And it's terrible to have to memorize your own article, right? So I'll start from the beginning again and maybe it will match up. So the thought process, I'll just tee this up and then request all of you to join in. I was thinking back, CMS started 57 years ago. What was the world like and the corporate world like 57 years ago? Okay. What was the world like? You know, this device, which all of us have in our pockets, and I'm told you shouldn't keep it in your pocket, but anyway, we all have this device. This is 5,000 times faster than the supercomputer when CMA started. 5,000 times. That's the kind of computing power that we have. Okay? What was the business fabric like in those days? We were still, in 1967, it was still a capitalist world. Okay? And the way business was looked upon, it was about, and we've been taught all this not by Professor Anup Sinha, but I should think, I mean, he would teach more interesting contemporary things, but some of his peers had taught us about what is business all about? Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, right? Capital was what it was all about. So the capitalist had the money, and then they would create factories, okay? And then people would go and work at those factories. So it was production-centric, factory-centric, manufacturing-centric was the world. And therefore, it was the driver of value was capital. Okay? And the word stakeholder wasn't invented in those days. Who was the boss? The entrepreneur, the capitalist, right? So what was the role of the manager? Delivering to whatever the entrepreneur wanted delivered, right? What did it mean on a day-to-day basis? It meant driving productivity and driving efficiencies on the shop floor. It meant what was the complexity? Dealing with labor unions. I guess that's what it was all about. But then soon after CMA was born, things started changing. Okay? And the driver, the first shift that happened was the shift from the manufacturing sector to the services sector. That shift started happening in the United States, but elsewhere. Now, the percentage of the services sector today in the United States is about 77%. The global percentage is about 67%. And even in India, it is about 50%. So that whole world changed from the manufacturing skewed towards services. Manufacturing also grew, but the global economy grew much faster. Another change happened at the same time, or started happening from the same time. The value of a company used to be the tangible value of a company, which is what is the value of the plant and machinery and so on. Intangibles started becoming more valuable than tangibles. And this started from 1970 was the first year where the value of companies, intangibles became more valuable than the tangibles. What is that number today? In the US, 90% of the value of a company which the stock market values is sitting in intangibles. And only 10% is sitting in tangibles. What are these intangibles? The intangibles, first of all, of course, reputation of the organization, brand, okay? Patents, okay? Logos, trademarks. It can also be various hidden things such as the culture of the organization, the governance, the kind of people who work there and so on. And this is where I need help. So over to Professor. What are intangibles? And comment on intangibles becoming more valuable than tangibles.
Good evening, one and all, and thank you for this opportunity to invite me here. So, given this backdrop, if I may just ponder upon and retrospect on what actually brought this shift, that transition from, let's say, a manufacturing-driven economy towards service-driven, it's about the infrastructures. So, let's say around early 1900s, when rail networks started proliferating, that ripple effect could be observed into manufacturing boosting up in the coming few decades. And slowly, the focus then shifted towards something more intangible as an infrastructure, which we cannot see, let's say, the optical fiber connection or the internet services. And we know that internet is there, let's say around the 2000s. And now when we see that ripple again with a lag of couple of decades now, and envisioning coming 10, 20 odd more years, we see that these two infrastructure as the skeleton have driven manufacturing and services, basically the underlying economic forces. So when it comes to the driving forces, it's about what's there in the foundation. So while it was manufacturing, there were physical layout, logistics, which actually curated that form of development and boost. And while we migrated from a very physical, robust logistics network towards a communication network, that shifted entirely towards, let's say, services-driven economy. And with this has come with a lot of changes, especially and particularly with respect to the human resource perspective.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
So
we'll get to that. So that introduces another point, which is automation. So you brought technology into the conversation very early. Okay. Unfortunately, the moment you bring technology and AI into the conversation, it kills everything else, right? But that's his area of special interest, so I can't blame him, right? Now what happened, and once I was at a event at the US consulate, where, and this was a good 25 years ago, where there was a representative from the US Chamber of Commerce. He was the president of the US Chamber of Commerce in America, okay? And there was a president of the call centers or, association in America, and it was me on this side from Kolkata. And what they were complaining about is they are having jobless growth in the US. So I said, look, at that time, our entire IT industry only had 250,000 people, whereas 15 million jobs are lost every year in America to automation. 15 million. And 15 million new jobs are created every year in America in other spheres. Okay. So then this guy says that, look, my friend, we have no argument with you. Our argument with our own government that if automation takes all the jobs away, what are people going to do? So I suspect, I'll just add to Professor's point, that possibly technology got a big boost during the World War, and then over the next couple of decades, it just picked up and started automating away a lot of what happened on the shop floor. And so then people became unemployed, so many people were not required. And then they started providing various services. It might have been simple delivery services or working in retail stores and so on, and that's what led to the service boom. And each year, with automation replacing what human beings used to do, more and more people are available to come into the service economy, and that's what must have happened. Any views?
Good evening. I think these are all historical ways of how we all came into what we are today and going forward to an uncertain future. I'd say that to take a cue from what Joydeep was referring to, yes, I think these are natural transformations and transitions of society and the order that goes through it. What was probably 50 years ago, today we are talking of a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. But I think the world has always been like this. We've changed in various eras. So there was a continuity factor. This is a change era that we are going through today also. So yesterday it was retail, tomorrow we don't, well, today it's probably quick com. That's the buzz today. Footfalls in retail or has decreased, leading to more quick com. It's in your palm top today. Tomorrow we don't know what's going to be. So I think in the era of the last 50, 70 years that we've gone through, we've also gone through various phases of uncertainty, then probably some bit of certainty, and then again a bit of uncertainty, because that's how we've evolved to today. That's my take from what I would like to take and give it back to you.
Right. I think Koushik Chatterjee in the keynote address, the Sir Jehangir Gandhi Memorial Lecture, pointed this out about uncertainty. Right. And perhaps the velocity of change has gone up. The world was stable for 100 years, and then the technology cycles keep shortening, and that's what drives the velocity of change. Okay. And uncertainty is probably a certainty today, is what Ambarish was pointing out, that uncertainty is possibly the only certainty, right, in the world ahead. Ranjan, would you like to jump in at this stage, or you'll wait for us to become a little more contemporary, because we're still stuck in the past?
Yeah, still, let me give it a shot. So, when you look at uncertainty, I think the angle that I would like to bring in here as perspective is the ability of leaders to understand, articulate, and manage uncertainty, and guide an organization through uncertain times is very, very important. And I think here the issue of change, managing change, and understanding the psychology of change comes in a very big way. So how do you go about it? That's one. What's the methodology? The second part is that when you bring in change hoping that your profitability and your bottom line will improve. But what actually lands up happening is that for a while, it takes a dip. And then it enters a valley of despair, as I call it. I think that's where a leader's role comes in a very big way. And I think I would like to add on in saying that the intellectual capital of the organization, the leadership capital of the organization comes in a very, very big way. And I think as we go on in the discussion, we'll have more of this coming.
So you've brought it back to what are the intangibles, which are so valuable. And you're saying among the intangibles that are so valuable, it is also the leadership capital and the intellectual capital of the organization that are intangibles, that are drivers of value. Okay. Now,
and if we are not able to guide an organization successfully through such troubled
times or uncertain times.
Yes. If you really look at history, a lot of organizations which have perished are the ones who could not adapt to change, or their leaders didn't have the gumption and the appetite and the capability to understand, articulate, and lead the organization through that. And I think that's very, very critical, because and that is something which is, you can't put a finger to it. It's ambiguous, not quantifiable, but extremely important for the bottom line.
Right. So, which were the 5 most valuable companies at the time CMA was formed? Quiz question. Anirban will give prizes.
That's right.
No Googling, right? IBM was number 5. General Motors. General Motors was number 1. Global. General Motors was number 1. Okay. No, Exxon Mobil. GE was number 3. Ford Motor Company number 4. Kodak is just a little below that. Okay, and IBM was number 5. Today, what are the 5 most valuable companies? Nvidia number 1, Apple number 2, Microsoft number 3, Alphabet is number 5. Right, Alphabet is number 5, Amazon is number 4. So this shows how not been evaluated in this, right? Which leads to the next thought of the next change that happened, driven by, I am responding to what Mr. Ajay Todi just asked, okay, which is the change that happened at the same time was dispersion of ownership. In the capitalist era, there was an entrepreneur or promoter, as we call them in India, and they held the majority of that business. Okay? Now, people started, these entrepreneurs started getting these companies listed, and then many shareholders came in. Each of these organizations have tens of thousands of shareholders. So this move happened. The moment this move happened, the role of the manager changed. Because earlier it was, listen to the boss. Entrepreneur, he says something, you have to implement it. But the moment, now today, what is the shareholding of a typical entrepreneur? Or, you know, we know all these big names, right? Jeff Bezos and so on. What is their shareholding? What is Jeff Bezos' shareholding in Amazon? 16%. Okay. So all of these range between 10% and 20% typically, right? So 80 to 90% of the company is held by tens of thousands of shareholders or by institutions in which there are tens of thousands of investors, right? So companies became very widely held. The moment companies became widely held, this drove 2 changes. The entrepreneur promoter, what was the main motive of the entrepreneur promoter? Did they ever want to sell their company? No. Then what did they want? Profit. So the main objective was profit. For the single entrepreneur, they wanted to do this the rest of their lives and then hand it over to their children and then grandchildren and so on. And what did they want? They wanted a return, a profit which they take home and spend on various things. Now, what do hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of shareholders want? Do they want profit, or do they wait for the dividend? Any shareholders here? What do you wait for? Do you wait for dividend? Valuation. You look for capital appreciation. You don't look for your dividend check. So the priority of management, so far as the shareholder goes, changed from profit to capital appreciation. Agreed? What causes capital appreciation? Is it profit that causes capital appreciation? Growth. Growth causes capital appreciation. So then the priority shifted from the manager trying to, deliver profit to the manager trying to deliver growth. So they tried for a bit, and then they realized, what is a typical growth rate? What's a reasonable growth rate for a company? Sorry? 7%, 10%, 12% is a typical growth rate. Okay. What, as shareholders, now let me flip it around. You answered the question as people who work in companies. Now answer the question as shareholders and tell me what's a good growth rate. Are you okay with 12% growth on your capital appreciation shares that you hold? How much do you want? 100% plus? You want 100% plus year on year? You're not happy with 12%? Sorry? 30 to 60 is a reasonable fellow, very reasonable fellow, right? Okay. What can deliver that? Normal organic growth cannot deliver that kind of growth. So then you have to have what? Inorganic growth or growth through innovation? Now, growth through innovation is something which we read in textbooks, right? That most of the 50% of M&A fails. So you have to drive growth through innovation. Is that very easy, Mr. Todi? You worked in so many places. Suppose you put a team to work. It's the same team used to be called R&D earlier. Huh? Now they are called innovation. Right? Huh? Can they catapult your organization to 60, 80, 100, 120% growth? Maybe they can if you have the right culture and if you have the right collaborative framework. Most organizations don't. So then what is easiest? M&A. Now the moment M&A comes in, it drives so the management focus shifted to growth, therefore to inorganic growth, therefore to M&A. Capital still remain even more important because you need capital to fund all of that growth. But where you get the capital from, the promoter no longer has that kind of money to fund that kind of growth. So institutions, so that's a whole ball game of or capital markets, okay? Managing M&A, the deal cycle, post-merger integration. Now these gentlemen have done a lot of it, right? So let me ask them about post-merger integration.
I think it's a very interesting question and it's a very interesting point actually. And some of us here have gone through that. A post-merger integration, it has got its own pluses and minuses for the organization, for also the people in the organization. Because I'm not putting a hat as an HR hat to relate to the people in the organization. Because there are two sets of people from two various cultures. One is the existing culture and one is the company that is getting merged, the culture of that organization also. So from that transition perspective, the HR and the leadership team needs to embrace what is it with the other company that they are taking over. Every company has got its strengths, so value adds of those companies need to be taken over. The confidence building, the trust building needs to come in a very transparent manner. That's very important. Transparency is very important in building trust, because that's where some organizations I have seen, in my career at least, not being able to handle that bit. Number 3 is that when this inorganic M&A or inorganic takeover has been taken place, it's for growth. So making everyone, the present and also the future employees who are part of the present again, who are part of the fold, making them show the vision, that leads to communication. So an effective deal of communication needs to, induced in the entire employee fraternity. So building trust, transparency, keeping open door communication two-way, where you have to also get into the habit of improving listening skills, because there is going to be a lot of heart burning, there's going to be a lot of stories, there's going to be a lot of, something can be chaotic, but that's what has to be handled in a matured way for these M&As from a people perspective. So the leadership here needs to come a little more matured, rise up to the occasion to ensure that you have a peaceful transition and focus on that objective, that is the growth that was being, at the start. Why did we go for this? For our growth, for increasing our market cap, for creating our values for our shareholders, for improving values in our companies, to ensure that we give the best to our employees and to our shareholders and to ourselves also. So I think from that perspective, these pointers are important.
Ranjan, I'll ask you a question. Yes. Because you have vast experience across so many organizations, you must have seen a lot of inorganic growth. Do people get dislodged from their positions? And what happens? Some of them leave as well. When they get dislodged, it leads to a lot of the stress which Koushik was talking about. He said stress, you need to manage, you need to learn how to manage how you deal with stress, right? So the moment you have M&A, the equation between the employer and employee of the capitalist era, that you work for me loyally all your life and I'll take care of you, the loyalty factor goes out of the window to be replaced by competency, commitment and so on, right? How do you manage? Because it's not just one M&A transaction every 2 years, 3 years or every year, right? There are M&A transactions going on. People get displaced, yes or no? Talented people who may have been fit for a certain position. As Ambarish was saying, our world was simple. I had a boss. After some time, I will take over the boss's role, a hierarchy-driven organization. Now, suddenly that equation changes. So would you like to talk about this?
Yeah, I think here comes the true test of leadership again. So the first thing that must be very carefully thought through is the role of the leader in articulating the purpose of the organization. The renewed, reviewed, new purpose of the merged entity. So what's the purpose to believe in? And then driving this down right through the last mile, so that the last mile of employee understands what is that overarching purpose that I must believe in and I must gun for. So the role of the leader in articulating and explaining the purpose of the organization and the purpose that the entire organization at each level needs to start believing in. That's one. The second part, and here you are into creating culture. What are the reinforcement systems that you're going to put in place? What are the messages that you're going to push through the organization? So if you are moving a business model and you are transforming a business model because of that M&A that has happened, what kind of behaviors do you need to exhibit in the market so that you get growth that you're looking for? And do your systems and processes within the organization drive those behaviors? That's the second part. So what kind of reinforcement systems do you put in place and how effective are they? Those leaders or those parts of the organization which do not align with the new purpose to believe in, what message do you send to them? What do you do with them? Do you exit them? Exit is not a bad word, but if it sends out a clear message that this is the culture and this is the way we are going to operate, this is the operating model, then I think that's a well-placed message. The third is, in order to get that kind of growth and that kind of business, and to get there in terms of the business objective, what are the new skills you require? Who's going to be responsible to impart those skills? What are the new skills that will be required and how will you impart those skills? That's the third and very important part. The fourth is, do you create consistent role models within the organization? Do they send out the same message? What is the coffee corner or the tea corner gossip that goes on after a meeting or after a conference? And that is where the messaging and the culture and the way the organization starts operating really happens. It is in the informal part and the gossip of the organization that you get to know what is actually happening within the organization. And when all of this works together in tandem, and this is a very, very, very systematic, programmed action that that the leadership has to take. It has to understand that these are the 4 steps. These are the very many activities that I will have to perform and ensure the organization performs so that the organization as a whole moves in one direction. Because you have merged 2 sets of teams, 2 sets of cultures, and you are with the belief that everything is going to unify into one. May not be. But if you move these 4 pieces together, and if you are able to carry the organization through the turbulent time that will come post a merger or an acquisition, only then will this whole piece succeed. And I think that is very critical. Most organizations which fail, 70% of the experiments in this area fail. And they fail because leaders forget their prime responsibility is not to get into nitty-gritties, but to understand what helps the organization work in tandem.
How important is trust in this leadership equation? That in troubled times, uncertain times, disruptive times, if your leader is trusted by people, is trust an important ingredient in this?
Absolutely. And when we say consistent role models, the first piece there is trust. The first piece is trust. But backed up by trust is a very concrete action plan. You should know what are you going to do, what are you going to state, what story are you going to articulate, how are you going to live by that story you are articulating. All that will result, trust is an outcome. All that will result in trust being generated. And that's important.
You raised a very important point around culture and around purpose. So just like to go there for a bit. Okay. I read a very interesting book many years ago. To me, it was a foundational book. It was Future Shock, written by Alvin Toffler. Okay. In that book, Toffler pointed out that in the industrial age, which we were describing, children were brought up by home, by school, by church, by everyone to be compliant. Obey your elders. Now there are many in this room who will also remember that they were taught to obey older people. Am I right? Why? Because they had to go to a factory when the whistle would blow, and they had to be lucky to get that job, and they would have to do something very repetitive all day long, as brought out by Charles Chaplin in Modern Times. You know, he's doing this very mechanical thing all day long without protest. And so children were brainwashed by family, by church, by school, by everyone to grow up and become compliant. Now, Toffler's point of view was that the manufacturing age is plateauing out. He wrote this book in 1970. And we are going into the service industry and then the knowledge age. And he's saying in the knowledge age, children will need other skills. They will need to innovate. They will need to be creative. They will need to innovate. Now you cannot do all of that without challenging status quo. So you no longer need compliance. What you need more is innovation. Okay? And so we see, if you look at those most valuable companies today, NVIDIA probably isn't there today as the most valuable company in the world because of inorganic growth. They're probably there because of innovation. Okay? Similarly with the others. Now, if you have to have innovation within your company, who in the world of intangibles, and 90% is intangibles, who drives the value? It's not the capitalist who drives the value. It's the people who work in your organization who create the value. Okay? They are the ones who innovate. They are the ones who hold customer relationships. They are the ones who implement management processes, governance. All of that is people. Why would people work for your organization and not for another organization? What's the difference? That difference possibly lies in what you said, in the purpose of the organization and the culture of the organization. So, in the knowledge age, the leader will have to drive the purpose and the culture and the values of the organization, which will then attract the right kind of people who will then create the value for the enterprise. Right. Now, I'll come back to you, Professor, when we move into topics of greater interest to you, possibly, right? Unless this is of interest to you. Yes, please jump in. Please jump in.
Add on to what Ranjan mentioned. So when we look around transformation in today's age, it doesn't only restricts itself to organization transformation. It's about enterprises now. And when we look from an enterprise transformational viewpoint, what he mentioned about the purpose, that's imperative. So purpose over here could be purpose like we are able to spot or envision some external opportunities, some growth streaks, or we have identified some problem areas, there are concerns, there are risks, there are uncertainties. So purpose could be from an external viewpoint while from internal deficiencies. And when we curate and when we start navigating one of these either paths, of course, it's complementary, then the idea of those nuts and bolts, when he said culture, so when I talk about culture, to me it's organizational level attributes. Maybe culture, maybe structure, everything will have a role play. And second was, of course, the talent, because it's the people who will be driving it. And in the current context, there's the means of that transformation. So when we talk about change, a change could be just a strategic renewal. We want to recreate value for ourselves or our other stakeholders of the enterprise. Or we want to recreate value with a particular way. Maybe that brings upon when you said about automation. So whether it's a process-based transformation only, it will be having a different vehicle when we look forward to that change. Or we may purely not innovate, but the digital means will empower us with that transformation. And there we can find our unique streak. So it's about leadership, which is the management's orientation, the organizational level attributes, and the means which drives the change in the enterprise transformation.
Okay, so moving from organization to enterprise. Now, growth has many other aspects and dimensions which changed our world. One aspect or dimension is companies started looking for newer markets to grow, newer products, newer markets, newer sources of capital. So all of this took companies global. So they started going to global markets, selling globally, but also procuring their parts or whatever they needed to produce, the inputs globally. So global supply chains, global finance. So globalization then drove another set of aspects for HR, such as a global workforce, a global culture, right? So that's one dimension. We'll just park this for the moment. Another dimension is, with scale came complexity. Okay? So when two organizations are competing, if you want to be the best, you can't be best end-to-end in a complex product or service. There are other specialists who can do it better than you. So alliances became a very important part of delivering to your customer. So look at the automotive industry. There are tier 1 vendors, tier 2 vendors. So it's not just a company supplying everything end-to-end. It's a whole network or alliance, a set of alliances. So managing the culture had to then become inclusive, not just within, but across. Right? This was given to us by growth. Would you like to comment on this, either of you?
Okay, I'll take the first one through an illustrative example because sometimes, it's good to share some stories. Yeah. So this happened with us at the Taj Hotels when I was there earlier. We were looking at going out of the country. And when you go out of the country, you either shake hands with a particular owner who runs a property, you end into a management contract, or you outrightly go and buy the property, whatever. I'll take the example of Boston City. When we went to Boston, there used to be a hotel called the Ritz-Carlton Boston. And we took that hotel in Swan Street there, and we renamed and reclassified that as a Taj Boston. Mind you, that was the first Ritz-Carlton in Boston. So there is a lot of emotion, and when we went there to take over, and the last day that happened is that it says the last day at the Ritz. A huge party going on and all. The next day it will be the Indian flag with the Taj flag, and we will reflag that and we are a Tata company. But the next day when we go there, the same bar, the same euphoria is completely dead. Now, we don't know what to do on that, honestly. No one taught us what is going to happen. Okay, we have a set of people whom we have trained to work, live the culture that the North America has, as also move in the Indian culture of the Tatas and the value sets of Taj into Boston. But we don't have business. So nothing works without business, isn't it? So the issue was that we were perceived to be an Indian company going to the shores of America. So it's not easy being an Indian, and those were the days of 2008-9 I'm talking of. After that, many Indian companies have done, and they are running practically a lot of part of the globe. So we had challenges, and the challenges was only faced when we called people in small groups, talked them out, gave them the assurance. And again I repeat, yes, to take a cue from what Ranjan said, the purpose of what I said earlier, the trust, the confidence and the communication. We made them what our Tata beliefs are, and that is written in the Tata Leadership with Trust. If you see the logo itself in the screens, we tried to imbibe upon them. We wanted to teach them what we are wanting to do. And slowly we earned confidence of the employees through small groups. And today, the hotel still stands. What I wanted to give this as an example as to how we have to get into and know the other side before actually we push our side into a new fabric. So it's important because human minds are the most complex of minds, and we need to respect that. And everybody is conscious and uncertain sometimes as to what's going to be my future. So there lies the role of leadership to step in and bring the factor of, I think, ownership for all. This was the first take that I would like to share. And the second was on the supply chain area. Well, you see, India today is a powerhouse, and we have to go and we have to depend, if we have to grow as a nation, we are dependent on other nations, and we will source. When we source machines, we source also talent. When we say we source talent, it's important to source the right talent first, and it can be worldwide. Again, I go into illustrative examples of I worked in a large conglomerate like Reliance Industries, and we had to source talent from globally. And global talent is very easier said than done. And you need to do a lot of due diligence to source global talent. And it has to fit into the organizational sets of what you believe in. So getting the talent is fine, but getting the talent to also do the work that you intend to is also another HR challenge. That's leadership again. So getting that into place requires a lot of interactions, lot of communication, lot of, listening skills, lot of, hearing the other side also, and also, ensuring that your core objective of meeting and taking the entire world with you and employees across the world with you into your fold, I think that's one of the HR leadership, it's a skill in which one needs to practice, harness, and smoothen it going time to time. Of course, the objective needs to be met because we are in search of growth, we are in search of improving our employer branding, we are in search of ensuring market cap, but all this, we need to take the people along with us.
Okay, we've got just 5 minutes to go, and I can see a very anxious Anirban standing up, which is a cue for me to wrap it up. But we cannot wrap it up without touching upon two topics which we'll just touch upon. Okay. Now, I'm not going into the shareholder versus stakeholder, which is a huge change, because I think that our keynote speaker has already, talked about it at length on the different stakeholders, what they need. It's not just about profit, it's about planet, it's about people, it's about purpose, all of that, right? But I think two topics we can still have a little bit of a discussion. The first is Gen Z entering the workforce. Okay? The Zoomer generation entering the workforce. Now, this generation is vastly different from any other generation. Technology. They are a technology native generation. Their social conscience is much higher than any other generation. They are very seriously concerned about the future of the planet, both the customers as well as the people entering our workforce. Why? Put yourself in their shoes. Suppose you are 24, 25 years old. You have to worry about for yourself for the next 50 years, 75 years. You have to worry about should you get married, should you have children. So you have to worry about 100 years. And you can see the climate change, the superstorms. We've seen Amphan here, right? Flooding, cities will get buried, 200 million refugees, So they are very, very seriously concerned. There is another characteristic about them. I think, possibly, maybe in India, maybe globally, that compliance culture, children brought up to be compliant, having to work in a factory for the capitalist, the motivator was what? The motivator was fear. All people brought up like that, they are fear motivated. But the Zoomer generation is not fear motivated at all. That's a marked change. What will you study? Our parents used to say you have to study physics, chemistry, maths. Right? Otherwise you won't get a job. Fear. What will you study? I'll see. I'll think about it. There's no fear. So, therefore, to deal with the requirements coming up from that generation, and they need much more touch time than any other generation. They need much more appreciation. You have to be true to your purpose. You have it drives transformation. And there's something else that they need to worry about. We briefly touched upon it today. Will AI take away all their jobs? Because the difference is, as I said, automation has been there for decades. Automation taking away jobs. What's the difference? Automation taking over jobs, they took over jobs which we as human beings believed human beings should not be doing those jobs because they do not require any cerebral input. Some jobs like Charles Chaplin in modern times, punching holes. It doesn't require you to use your human brain. So we were okay with those jobs being automated away. The difference is that now AI, Gen AI, robotics, they might take away jobs that do require human brain. So what we perceive to be human jobs. Now, the jury is out on this. But my own perspective on this, and Professor is dying to jump in, my own perspective on this is that it will augment our own ability as human beings. And second is, what will remain is anything to do with emotion. You're unlikely to get a rags to riches story around a robo. My take. Over to you, Professor.
The topic which you opened now, and with Anirban sitting there on top of our heads to stop within 5 minutes, I can keep away most of them from dinner also. So maybe we'll not straight away get into that debate about whether AI will replace all jobs. We'll take a step back and reassess quickly. When we mentioned few names, let's say 30, 40 years back, it was Ford and General Motors and General Electric, IBM. And then we counted upon NVIDIA and Amazon. We missed out that transition again. So in between, there was an era where IBM continued, persisted, with Google, Microsoft at the top, and then of course, Meta and others taking over. So that transition, that has not happened overnight. So when we look around this change with respect to the companies and with respect to the generations also, it is basically basically the change makers, the change enablers. A lot of onus and a lot of tilt has gone towards the side of the change enablers. That when I talk about Google and Microsoft, IT assets used to transform organizations. But now, it's not IT assets. It's about self-capable digital assets. So I'm capable to revamp myself on my own capabilities. And that's where the idea of enterprises and ecosystems comes up. And when we look around from an ecosystem perspective in the current context, the skill sets which are needed are very diverse and flexible. And each individual may fit in any of those gaps. And that's what makes them fearless. And plus, the medium of exchange. I'm sitting here right now. If I want to navigate myself with, let's say, AI-enabled or machine learning courses, I can do that in 3 months. And within 3 months, I can go for a change management. I can again do that. So that fearlessness is not foundationless. So there are something which is imparting towards it. I can...
You can go on all night. We are absolutely confident of that, right? But I heard a shout. I said you have to shout if you want to say something. And I heard my dear friend, and again with me from class 1 in school, Ajay Todi, and I can't say no to him. Go ahead, Ajay.
I found that one of the points. This was about the Gen Z and talent management in the context of that. What we found was that no matter what you did, okay, we're talking about Gen Z now. Let's put it the younger part of the employee force. Rewards and recognition always came up as lucky. No matter what you did, you found that your scores on the OHS survey, and your rating depended on that, on what marks you got. So we found that the rewards and recognition was always low on the scores. This is directed towards Samir and Ranjan, of course. Yeah, that your take on this as to
what he's saying is, Joydeep, shut up. Give it to them.
Yeah, I've heard enough.
So I'll just give you a perspective. There are 3 things that come to mind when we talk of Gen Z. And quickly, because I know we've just got 2 minutes left now. Number 1, for the Gen Z who's coming in, 66% of the Gen Z who's going to hit our workforce in the next 5 years are going to come in with serious mental health issues. And are our managers equipped and ready to handle mental health issues? The answer is no, and therefore the response to that is, please quickly equip your managers, otherwise there's disaster waiting to happen in any organization. You may try growth, you may try M&A, everything. If this hits you, you are finished. That's one. Second, the ability of a manager, because right through our childhood, we've been taught to emphasize on the thinking aspect, which is quantitative aptitude, knowledge, skills, mathematics, science, and so forth. Our ability to handle, understand, and interpret feelings is zilch. So the difference between thinking and feeling, it's both thinking and feeling together which makes a good human being, good manager. The ability to handle both and transition between both is very, very critical. So that's the second level of skill that needs to improve. The third, with regard to AI, whether it will take away jobs or not, research says in 66% of the jobs going forward, 1 out of 3 tasks, and I repeat, 1 out of 3 tasks only will get automated, not full jobs. Therefore, the need to reorient and reskill people is going to come in a very big way. Are our managers and are our organizations even wary or even aware of what is going to come in the next couple of years? First comes awareness, then comes understanding, then comes building the skills. And I think the faster we do it, the challenge before forums of this kind is to actually help organizations quickly reskill. And I think if we don't do that, we would not be serving the purpose of organizations like this, CMA or CII or anybody, National Skills Development Corporation or whatever. I think that's where the focus should be, and that's where Gen Z, that's the impact I see Gen Z going to have on organizations and their sustenance. Thank you.
I'll just add to what Ranjan said, because I love the Gen Z, whatever you call it. It makes us think and think young at least, and makes us think broader. That's what, because they make things very simple. At the same time, I want to add that they want to see in an organization what is in for me. What is in for me in terms of my learning. So an organization needs to be on the learning curve. That's very important. So if we have a learning, if an organization is a learning organization, you can then bring, because this Gen Z, whatever we call it, the new age boys and girls, I could call it because they are very young, they have a lot, they've been born with all this, okay. So they are superior in terms of their, I wouldn't say brain matter, but in the analytical abilities to comprehend things very quickly. And to utilize them and optimize them is the strength an organization needs to have. So the organization needs to build its reward and recognition, as coming to your point, has to be very robust. It has to be on the spot if required. It has to be fair. It has to be transparent. And it has to be very performance driven. So when you are fair, transparent, performance driven, robust and on the spot, you are bound to have your new age people saying that, hey, I'm come to the organization which at least, I'm doing something good, they reward me. Blow it across the organization, advertise it. So this is the digital media today. Let one day the entire, your ESS, what we call it, the employee self-service portal, have his face on it. They need esteem. I would look into that part, number one, to make it very, and keep the learning curve going on. Have Udemy's of the world, Skillsofts of the world, Lindays of the world, giving them learning solutions. So they're always learning. So we have to use their mind and their time, that 10 hours that they put in the organization, to be engaged. And this engagement, because they have a lot of energy. So to engage them in whatever positive way, I think then we gain as an organization towards growth.
my 2 cents. Now, when we look around the Gen Z part, and when we are encompassed with all novel and disruptive technologies, these technologies are meant to, again, empower individuals. And replacement is a fallout. So again, when we talk about leadership, it's the imperative role of leadership that how we build around future tech strategies, that all these novel and disruptive forces are responsibly managed, so that they are not there to diffuse or replace us, rather to complement us. So that's with respect to the first off.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we've run out of time. Right. To the panelists, to the audience for bearing with us, and for CMA for having invited us. I'm sorry we have to close because after this is Professor Anup Sinha. I'm the chairman of his fan club. So there is no way I can keep him waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Datta Gupta, for steering this session, and thanks to all of you. We'll just now felicitate all of them. May I request Mr. G.M. Kapur, President of Calcutta Management Association, to please come up on stage, and Mr. Framjee, sir, please come up on stage.
Thank you.